Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Old Reader, New Reader here on Near Mint Condition. I don't think my face hasn't been on the channel since I did my top 10, I think. Who knows? Who knows what time is? I don't know. Happy New Year, everybody. And Happy New Year, especially to my two lovely co-hosts today. You probably know TikTok Tina.
Hi, guys.
She's here on Saturday sometimes. She does the TikToks. And then we have our friend Ren here.
Howdy. What are we doing?
Howling at the moon.
Yeah.
3 hosts and a moon.
I've almost even got 3 hoes. 3 hoes and a moon. Happy New Year.
Starting off strong.
Listen, Over Your New Reader is a very casual book review experience. But I want to thank you both so much for being here. So today, as people can read by the title of the video, I'm talking about Delicious in Dungeon. So we just chose the first 3 volumes. Ren's already started to read a little bit ahead. Tina's read much more. So Tina, you consider the old reader here this time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Not by age, just by reading the book.
Oh, okay. Because I devoured like 10 volumes in like one setting.
Listen, if I had the access easily, I would have. Miss Hoopla. I don't got that.
No, it wasn't on Hoopla.
Really?
It was my local library.
Well, must be nice.
Just saying.
I will have to check my local library so I can read the rest as well. But we figured this would be a good read since the show just started. I'm not sure. Have we already gotten episode 2 or just episode 1?
Just one.
Okay.
2's out in like 2 days, I think.
Yeah. So right now that's coming out weekly, but it's been pretty exciting. So I read the first volume like, I don't know, a year and a half ago and loved it. Mm-hmm. So basic premise before we kind of get farther into it. We start with this adventuring party. And when we first see them, they have run into this red dragon. It attacks a comrade of theirs, one of their relatives, and she teleports them all back to the outside the dungeon. But unfortunately, they've lost all of their supplies. 2 of the party members have left, and they have to figure out how they're going to get back there to hopefully save their comrade, the main character's sister, with very limited resources. No money, almost no food. They can either sell off all their armor to eat, or they can find a different way. And that different way is figuring out how they can cook things in the dungeon as they go, which is not the favorite of everybody in the party. But apparently, according to the main character, it feels more like a sort of happy circumstance in a way, because he is stoked about cooking along the way in the dungeon. Because as they go through, it takes a lot of expenses. It's difficult to like maintain yourself because you have different levels of this dungeon. So almost like a very like reasonable fantasy or D&D conundrum. Usually they take that out of there. You're like, oh, you're here to go through a dungeon. The food part just figures itself out. And this one is the main deal. Hence, Delicious in Dungeon as the title, aka Dungeon Meshi. So that's the quick gist of it. And I was trying to think throughout the day what the best way to dig into this is, because it's episodic in a way, at least in the beginning, of just like this floor, this is how we eat this thing, this is how we cook it, this is how we fight this thing, and this is how we cook it. So I was gonna put up to you guys if you thought if it's better to go sequential, or just better like talk about our favorite stories and just kind of chill and chat about Delicious in Dungeon. Or we can go thoughts first and then dig in.
I'm open for whatever. If we want to do dessert first or if we want to do the main course, I'm up for either.
Let's do dessert main course. So let's go first thoughts.
Okay.
Ren, how did you feel about this? You're a big fantasy guy, big dungeon crawling guy. In our past, we're all in a D&D campaign together, by the way, everybody. Full disclosure. We all D&D together. Not
D&D buds.
So, I really didn't kind of know what to expect other than the obvious that, obviously it was about dungeons and cooking to some degree. at first it kind of seemed like a little bit more of like a slice of life, I feel like, in some ways, because it starts off like very kind of low key for the most part. Like there's stakes, but there's not really like, it's not
Yeah.
a super action heavy thing by any means, at least in the beginning. There's definitely some elements of that, but I mean, I think even in comparison to like a lot of the other more comedy related fantasy stuff, it still takes kind of a backseat to that for the first probably volume, maybe the first 2 volumes or so.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah. And for me, I was a little concerned about it just because there have been so many fantasy anime and manga over the past 10 plus years at this point. We've got so many different isekais, like, my best friend's stepmom that has +4 to her armor class or whatever.
The recent I transport to other worlds a vending machine.
Yeah.
It's a real one.
Right.
Yeah, it's real.
There's
if I hear fantasy and isekai together, I'm so tired of that genre. I'm a little burnt out right now. So I was happy to see that this is not the case in this one.
Yeah. And I think that was the thing too, was like, I was worried that it was gonna not be able to keep my attention. That I was basically just gonna, kind of get through this so we could talk about it, and then that would be kind of it for me. But I actually ended up getting hooked, and it was a little bit of a slow burn at first. I feel like this is definitely one where it's not just a like 1 or 2 chapters and like you're in sort of thing. Like I think it really, at least for me, it took a while before like the hooks kind of got sunk in there. And when I finished volume 3, I was like, oh, that's pretty good. And then kind of sat on it for a couple hours, and I was like, all right, I guess I'll go buy the next volume. Ended up starting on 4 today. But it definitely kind of gets gradually like darker and more involved. And I saw somebody in the chat mention the world building, which there's absolutely a lot more world building as time goes on. Way more than I definitely expected for something like this. So it's definitely one of those cases where it kind of seems like on the surface level it's like one thing, when it starts off, but then it really kind of turns into something else fairly fast after the first 10-15 chapters or so.
So Tina, first thoughts about giving too many spoilers away. Good luck, Tina.
Good luck.
Tina, aka spoils everything, Tina.
Right. As Ren was saying in somebody comment, like you find out that there's a little bit more at stake with
First
this.
of all, real quick, I love that you say you gotta let it cook, because that works on so many levels. Thank you so much. That's really great. Let him cook.
Let it cook. Well, I was going to say you got to let this marinate a little bit.
Ooh.
Because the first couple volumes is exactly that. It's something that you're like, oh, I've seen sort of a fantasy novel. It's cozy. I've had that chicken dinner before. But the mangaka really kind of lets some stuff marinate. You find out that like after you've read a little bit, you're like, oh, it's got some seasoning at all. After all, it's
I love this. So good. Keep it going.
I mean, I can make as many food analogies as you want.
This is a pun episode now, so.
But no,
avoiding it really.
Yeah, seriously. Anyways, but no, it seriously, you have to let it marinate a little bit. I was reading somebody on Goodreads that said, it was kind of boring, because it was just like the monster of the episode. And I was like, but you didn't read enough. This is one of the mangas that you're going to want to read beyond volume 1 or volume 2. If you don't like that ideal, watch the anime. It's going to give you a little bit more quicker. I like any anime. But if you like reading it, picking up small details that are flaked within the first little bits, it's really going to have a payoff the further you get in. I enjoyed it. It was a quick read. I sat down and I ran through the first 4 volumes in one night. The next night I ran through the next 4 volumes, and I'm up to 10 right now. Wow. It's something that had been on my burner to read because I thought the art was gorgeous. But like I said, I was so burnt out because I wasn't really looking into what it was all about. Like people told me it was cozy. I was like, oh no, is it an isekai? I'm kind of burnt out of these. The art looks gorgeous, but I was hesitant about it being another cozy anime that really doesn't have any meat to it, and that was just gonna be another burnt dinner. You know what I mean? Not really filling, but it's absolutely filling, and it's dessert.
See, I would say, okay, so I absolutely agree with both of you, because I think I was very surprised as I got to like the third volume and really got to see what this is more about, which we'll get to. But it got me immediately with the coziness. But I'm a very much, maybe because I read a lot of things, but I love a cozy fantasy. I love a nothing happens cozy fantasy. Flying Witch is one of my favorites, and so immediately I'm like, yes, this is what I want. On its premise, it's pretty simple as we go through. And I like seeing the different ways they harvest the different dungeon creatures and what that's like, and what I love seeing how that breaks down. And so for me, immediately I was like, oh, I love this. Because I read the first volume forever ago and really liked it. But I could see that if it continued that way, it doesn't keep the reader wanting to read more if it's like that, right?
Right.
Because there's some cozy things that work that way, and some things you're like, okay, I'm good. So I definitely agree with all of you. I guess that's something we can talk about. Like, so let's dig into, I guess, more about the stories about would be better. So within the first couple volumes, I guess we talk about the first couple volumes first, I guess, and then we'll dig into the bigger stuff. So the first couple of volumes, we deal with a lot of each floor figuring out how you can eat certain things, how you kill them, but also how you kill them well without wasting. So there's this really great conversation from the get-go of like, okay, I'm going to kill this man-eating plant. One, should we do that? Because it did eat people. Do we want to eat something that digests people to feed ourselves?
Yeah.
Where's the morality come in with that?
I love the elf.
Oh, the elf we should talk about the elf. So there's in our party, actually, I've got the Wikipedia ready. I was gonna like do a whole Canva, and I took a nap instead.
Yeah, the names like Cincy is the dwarf.
Yeah, so this has extra characters in it, but just disregard that. So our main guy, you can see my mouse a little bit, is Leos Toden. He's a knight, sort of like a soldier, but I don't really quite have a complete vibe on exactly his class, if it fits.
I wouldn't say paladin.
It feels paladin, right?
Yeah,
it's kind of like a paladin fighter.
Yeah, without the holiness, you know what I mean?
Right, without the, like, he's definitely breaking some oaths by eating some dungeon food.
Maybe his oath is to the food. And then we have Marcel Donato, who I went to school with his sister, the one who is in the stomach, presumably, of this red dragon. She's an elf mage, and she thinks that eating dungeon monsters is disgusting and the most vile thing that could ever happen, and she continues to feel that way pretty consistently. Then we have Chill Chuck Timms. Fantastic. I guess it's a halfling, right?
Yes.
I think they call him a half foot, but yeah, basically the same thing. Yeah, because they have a couple different like names for the races than the typical D&D stuff. Because I think like even Leos is like a tall man, I think is what they call him.
Yeah, a tall man, not a human. He's a tall man.
Yeah.
A tall man. And he's kind of like their rogue. He takes like the traps and things, which we've got to talk about that one issue where he helps prepare food that way. I think it's great. And then we have Senshi, who they run into, that helps teach him even more about cooking monsters, because he's just living in the dungeon. He just lives in there on the third floor. He learns how to cook things. He's like, hey, can I just hang with you guys to the Red Dragon? Because I love to eat it. And they're like, dope, sounds great. Let's party up. And he's really concerned with not only using what's in there in the dungeon to eat, but also helping to sustain the dungeon, which we'll get to. What's the best way to talk about? I guess we talk about what are your favorite like weird recipe or weird monsters and how they killed them in those first two.
I thought it was interesting to like see when I think it was in like the very first thing when the slime came down, and then you find out that like the slimes are basically almost, I think they say it's like a reverse stomach essentially, whereas like they have everything on the outside and then it's protecting everything on the inside. So to see that there's like an actual anatomy to it and everything, and that if you cut them a certain way, it actually does, kind of kill them essentially, as opposed to just chopping into the jelly, so to speak. So just stuff like that. There was a lot of stuff with the anatomy. I think when they get to the what is it, the chimera that's got the it's like the part chicken, part snake.
Yeah.
And yeah, and you think that the snake is actually like the backside, but it's actually the front side, and it's like a common mistake. And they twist a lot of things intentionally to just kind of make things a little bit
Throw it
different
on
like
the
that.
head.
Right, yeah.
Robbie.
Got a guest.
It's Robbie.
Aw. Robbie would also eat a basilisk.
He would.
Yeah, he would.
I was so continually impressed by how many aspects the author clearly thought really hard and long about regarding how all that worked. Absolutely. Like, so much effort is put into these. It's wild. My favorite is absolutely the suit of armor.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Because he sets that up so early where he's like, oh, because he talks about all the different things you can eat. He's like, and suit of armor, I don't think you can eat that. That'd be really cool. And he gets so disappointed. I really want to know. And he's like, it can't just be magic. It has to be something else. And he finds out that there's these like colonies of, I guess, bugs or insects, or there's something. It's a colony of some massive
They're like
creature.
mollusks, I think is what they say.
Yeah, the suit of
Mollusks.
armor is like mollusks, and then the coins and jewels are bugs.
Yeah. They're the mollusks that like they crawl into the crevices of that armor and they connect to each other like living tissues. And that's how they move the armor. And I love that. I think that's so cool. And his excitement of that, because it makes sense because you attack armor and it falls apart and comes back together. How do you defeat it? What's controlling it? And you have to get that. Love that. And I love the treasure insects too. I thought that was very interesting about these like party members that defeat this enemy, and they found this like huge treasure trove of jewels and necklaces, and they were so excited. And the next time we see them, they have been killed. And of course, the reader, you're like, oh, I see where this is going. Okay. And then we find out that they're all actually bugs parading as jewels, which would be a natural way for them to change within that dungeon.
Yep. I liked the vines. Like, of course, like if they touch, they like have a allergic reaction to. And then working through, like, yes, you can still eat this. It looks like a banana almost that you can peel it. But the fact that they're like, oh, we can also use the creatures inside here as armor or skin to go past these because they have like a symbiote relationship. They don't.
Oh, the frog suits?
The frog
Yeah,
suit.
the frog suits.
So good.
I love
the
that.
frog suits.
It's so good. Oh man, and it's all this other stuff. We got we have our typical mimics,
Mhm.
and then how you defeat them and how you can possibly kill them, and also just the way that the whole dungeon interacts with one another, like what eats what and how that works, is really cool.
I think it's really well written, and kind of going back up what was said earlier about how well thought out it is with like the ecosystem and everything, because like, and how everything kind of builds off of each other, because like you get introduced into the treasure bugs and then you find out later like, oh, those actually eat mimics because they'll basically slip in through the cracks of the chest and just basically eat the mimic from the inside out, essentially, and then it just turns into a normal chest at that point. So I just thought stuff like that was just so clever, and just a lot. It's taking a lot of like the same fantasy ideas that we've been used to and introduced 1,000 times over, but then just putting like its own unique spin on it, which I think is really kind of what keeps this engaging.
Right.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the big part of this, right? About just like the dungeon ecosystem. It's like, if I want to get literary about, if we're in a college class, like, let's talk about the unnamed character, the dungeon. I don't know what's happening today. As we go through here, especially through Senshi, the dwarf, we learn that his main point here is to leave the dungeon better than he found it. Like, because he knows that you could definitely go through here and ruin it. You could ruin the ecosystem here that it supports. You could go through and collect everything and take its resources. And he wants to be able to maintain this, have the dungeon continue to like live almost like an organism, while also making it easier for the dungeon, the adventurers to go through. And we find all these really cool, unique ways that works. Like the one I want to definitely talk to you guys about was the golems. So I thought was so interesting. Because the golems were, like, I guess, created by like the magic ministry. They created them to be in there. But he realized because they're made of mud and dirt and all this, you could actually grow plants on them. And without killing them. So yeah, you could turn them into soil, but they probably wouldn't last. It'd be taken over. But they'll carry that on their backs and it'll be fine. You can grow all that stuff on there. So at one point they knock them down. They do what farmers do. I don't pay attention to my farming sim games. I just do the thing. And then they wake them back up to carry essentially their crops. So that's one way. But I wanted to see what your thoughts were, like the unique ways that is being put together, and kind of maybe where you've been. I mean, Tina, you can't speak as much to this because you've read farther, but like where you kind of see that going with this, like what maybe, I don't know, bigger picture.
I think one of the things that I found really interesting about how that was handled was wasn't even necessarily so much about like the food and maintaining everything in there, but also like what are the long-term consequences if you interrupt that. So there's a great example where they get into a fight later on, and the elf is essentially casting like these big explosions, and like essentially it's like trying to get her to stop. And the whole point is like if you just wreck everything, not only are you going to ruin the ecosystem, but then there's not going to be like these monsters on this floor, which would prevent the orcs from coming up and then having them invade the villages on the outside and getting out of the dungeon ultimately. So in a way, and I don't know if it was the intention or not, but it is also kind of just like a commentary on like exactly what happens when you just start, chopping down a bunch of trees and start messing everything up, and like what those long-term consequences are and how that kind of fans out, as opposed to just being like, oh, it's, this is the best immediate solution. You have to kind of think and look at the big picture.
Kind of a fantasy Fern Gully, if you will, without the like toxic sludge. But no, I mean, it is
Robin Williams bat.
Oh man,
what a crime!
I mean, and Chilka could almost kind of be the little kind of Robin Williams bat. But no, I do. I think it doesn't. Sometimes it does go a little heavy-handed when Senshi is like, like, hey guys, make sure to leave stuff. And they are kind of like heavy hitting sometimes on that message that this is a working ecosystem. It can thrive and it has all these working cogs. If one piece of that cog is missing, it can be detrimental to other parts of that cog, or, like for their party, the lower level creatures support bigger creatures, but they also suppress some of the bigger creatures in keeping them in the lower levels. So if we take away some of these smaller bad guys that keep some of these larger creatures at bay, these larger creatures will move up to higher or beginner levels. And so these new adventuring parties are just going to be decimated. So it kind of in counterintuitive or intuitive, the parties that are coming through, if they don't kill everything, they actually help other parties survive longer. They get more experience, they get more XP. And then we kind of find out some more interesting facts. Like if you die in the dungeon, you can be revived.
Oh yeah, that was neat.
Now this was like, I think one of the aspects I found out early on that I was like, the mangaka really has more going on. This is one of those small hints that you've got more going on in this world than just, hey, this is a monster. Let's find out how to kill it. Let's cook it. What can we make with it? They're like, oh, hey, this party has died. We've got revivers coming through. They'll revive these people. Let's go on. We don't want this dead body just, in the way. So we'll move them off somewhere where they can actually be found.
Like when they hung up that guy.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly
what I'm just leave him right here from the fight. Now let's hang him up so I can see him. It just looks warming.
And they're still like, the elf is like, oh my God, this is horrible. I love she's like the moral compass of the group, almost.
Yeah.
But you find out, like, outside of the dungeon, if someone dies, they're dead. They can't be revived.
So, yeah, and that was interesting first, because when they first started talking about it, it's like, oh, well, I haven't died yet, or I have died, or, when I first died. It was, and before they explained how it worked, because when they first like show it, they're like, this is how it works, where you die and your spirit's kind of within chains, so you can't really leave your body while you're in the dungeon, but only while you're in the dungeon. But when they first talked about it, I was like, is this a weird isekai thing? Because there's so many isekais like that. Like, I die and then I get revived and I come on back. I was like, it's either that or it's a Dragon Quest deal. You know what I mean? But it's interesting.
Yeah, without going too much further, because this is a little bit beyond where we read, I won't necessarily go into spoiler territory, but they do actually start talking about, like, there are some deaths that it's, you can just revive and that's the end of it. But if you die in certain ways, or if it's not really like a full death and maybe it's like a possession and stuff like that, like there's different rules that apply to all of that too. So as you keep like going forward, they really do just kind of, it's a trickle down effect. Like, you really start with something really simple and then it just gradually, they just kind of build on that, and it turns out that there's more details than we knew to begin with, even with stuff like that. So
I appreciate that. Like, it's not, and I think some manga, some animes, they put you in a world and it looks really unique, really amazing, and then they're just like, here's the whole layout and details that you'll need to know to enjoy all this.
Typical of Japanese narration.
Which is typical, but I like the slow burn. So I like, you're dropped in a world, it is what it is, and you're going to find out stuff as you go.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that, because that tells me that the mangaka doesn't think that their readers are, I don't know, not as smart, or, this is something they're like, okay, I assume that you're going to go on a journey with me. This is already mid-journey, but you're going to find stuff out, and I think you're intelligent enough to slowly pick up clues along the way that this is more than just a delicious dungeon.
Yeah, which I appreciate. I think you should always trust your reader as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice to just kind of figure it out as it goes along. Because, like, I'm already picking up pieces I can't wait to see, like, how they pan out. Like, and see what certain messages right now. Because we have, like, there's a moment here I really like where it's when we're in the water area. There's a lot of really cool things happening there. One, Senshi's learning to kind of trust magic a little bit more. But they're also dealing with, like, some different sea creatures in there. And he kind of overdoes it to try to fix it. He's like, it's my responsibility, because he's already established that he takes a lot of responsibility for upkeeping this dungeon and taking care of people, and even just taking care of things like the restrooms. Like, this is his life, and he realized at that moment, wait, maybe I don't need to do anything. This already has its whole ecosystem. It already has its circle of life. I don't need to insert myself in this particular instance. Mm-hmm. Some of these maybe don't need me and existed before me and without me. And I'm like, where's this going to go? Where's this going? What are we doing with this?
I also like that part in the story is really interesting, because we get the elf and she's like, okay, look, Leos, I draw the line. If it's demi-human, we do not eat it. We do not touch it. It is too human. We do not. And he's like, but fishmen, are they really demi-human? And I'm like, oh no, where does this go?
One Piece flashbacks.
Right.
Oh no.
I'll take the piece off the head. It's a plan. Like, wait a second, is that where they keep their babies? He's like, it's too late.
Oh no.
Yeah, I think this is I think the style of the characters is really interesting. The art really does it for me. Overall, just design, I think, really does a lot for this. I think it's probably the reason I picked it up in the first place, and probably a lot for others too. Because I feel like there's a lot more other things that are like this now. But I remember when this first came out, it felt like something really special and new. Because now I've seen some other, like, and this is just me looking at titles of things and like covers. But now I feel like I'm seeing a few other ones. But most of them are isekai, where it's like, I run a library in a fantasy world. But I definitely think it's I think a cool precedent for maybe other things we might run into. Also, I love that the main character just really likes food, and that's about his deal. He's just a nice guy. Nice tall man.
I think some of the appeal too is at least for me, this reminds me a lot more of the older classic anime. Not to just pull the back in the day type stuff, but I mean, like, I get more of like a Lodoss War vibe off of this
I
than
would
I do.
immediately when you said think about classic anime, I was like, Lotus War.
Yeah, like it's like it's more of that, almost like that old school D&D vibe as opposed to like the newer things, because there is a difference. I mean,
Yeah.
you can just tell thematically and everything that it just feels different. And I think that that's kind of what made this so refreshing, is it does feel like some of, you know, the older stuff that we're a little bit more accustomed to as well. And that's, I think that's part of what does separate it from a million different isekais and everything else that's out there, is it really kind of hits that actual classic fantasy kind of feel to it.
Which is a great point, because I miss all of those dearly.
Same.
I mean, I love a lot of current manga and anime. Like, I just caught up on Shield Hero, which is the one isekai that I am like always about. But I do miss this style of fantasy a lot, because there's a lot of that. I feel like they threw a lot of us through a lot of that fantasy style at us, like in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Players especially. But they were like, hey, D&D is really cool. How about you have all these that feel very D&D? We're going to really go on this. And it is nice to have that again. Alex agrees. That's what you do. Love you, Alex.
And to be clear, like, I'm not trying to like trash talk the stuff that's out there. It's popular for a reason, and there's plenty of good things that are out there.
Oh, yeah.
I do think that it's probably a little bit oversaturated at this point, just because there's just a lot of it, you know, and there's probably a lot of really good ones that are getting buried because of it. I mean, that's just kind of how it goes. But I mean, that's just kind of anime in general. I mean, we kind of go through cycles where you get a lot of one thing at one time. You know, we went through a phase there where it was like nonstop idol anime, and that's like, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But it is just nice to see something that actually stands out and is a little bit different than the stuff that we're kind of getting inundated with at this point.
Yeah, it's kind of this particular manga, I think, breaks the mold for what we've had, but it does hearken. It has so homages to the past, kind of just the general feel of it. I think its pace is a little bit slower, which is what I enjoy, what I think really akins it to yesteryear anime or manga. It's not just like action. We have to constantly keep going. We have to have, you know, overpower over this. It's kind of a steady growth, and I really enjoy that steady growth. Give me a slow bake that, you know, is just perfect at the end, rather than something that's been tossed in a fire, you know?
I love you so much.
I swear you have to have like a whole list of these that you're just like reading off or something.
Yeah, it's just natural.
Oh my God.
I'm really impressed.
But I want to say you almost forget about the main character's sister.
I do. And I think they do too.
I think in some ways they do. It's in the back of their mind. That's the whole goal. And I think the mangaka is doing that for a reason, that we're kind of getting more of the world. We're forgetting the end goal a little bit here. And when you get in later parts of the manga, the later books, that kind of comes out a little bit more. You get little juicy bits, the nice little juicy bits.
It's like if you sleep too often in Baldur's Gate 3, so then things will happen because you didn't get there fast enough.
Yes, they will.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with what Tina's saying. Like, I think that it does start off slower, but I think that build's important, because even if you compare it to something like Lodoss War, if you remember right with Lodoss War, like, you get thrown right in the middle of it from the very beginning. Like, they don't do a lot of explanation until like way later. And sometimes that can be really jarring, because sometimes, at least for me, like, I struggle a little bit more with those. Like, I'm one of those, like, let's start at point A and kind of work our way up, as opposed to like, let's start in the middle and then kind of build up the backstory later. Like, I could do it. It's just not my preference, but that's one of the things that I did like about this, even if it took a little bit more to kind of get the hooks in, ultimately I've appreciated it more.
Robert says the dark origin for a wholesome family tale.
Right.
We love to see it, Yeah, it's been good to have. I feel like I have a good amount of different fantasy things to read and watch right now, so I'm pretty happy about that. Not like an overabundance, but I've got these little pockets of things I really enjoy. I've got this. I've got Shield Hero. I've got Goblin Slayer, which I still love. Just skip the first episode, you guys. It's okay. Just like trigger warning. The rest is really good, but just like no. Just, like,
yeah.
Just be prepared. First episode. But everything
Have
else.
you watched Fearin'?
Oh yeah. Oh, Randy, I watched Fearin'.
I haven't yet. I have seen it all over Twitter,
You'll
but
like
I know nothing about it other than like this is the girl.
I already know who you and Lisa will cosplay, so sorry ahead of time.
It's worth the hype. It is. It's one of those, like you said, like the market for fantasy, like the isekai or that trope is very saturated at this moment. But Delicious Dungeon and Fearin' are one of the breakout fantasies that I think you would absolutely enjoy.
Okay, I will check it out.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to read it too.
I'm
back in my Crunchyroll era right now. It's killing me because I'm like, oh man, I've got to read all these. I gotta read all the Apothecary Diaries, and I didn't ask for this.
I've got volume 1 and 2 if you want to borrow it sometime. I'm collecting Apothecary Diaries, Happy Marriage and stuff. So if you want to borrow them sometimes.
Yeah, I do. Anyways, okay, so I think, is there anything else you'd like to say about the book before rating and chat and hangout time?
Did we want to touch on the anime at all?
Sure, let's talk about it.
I haven't watched it yet.
Okay.
I did ask you guys, but I haven't actually watched it.
Yeah, I watched it a little bit shortly before the show, just to make sure that since it was only one episode, it really wasn't that big a deal.
Yeah, how do you like it?
I liked it a lot. It follows the manga very faithfully. I mean, like you do get a lot in that first episode. I think they get all the way up until the man-eating plants and ending that that whole little part there. Nothing really changed. At least if it was anything, it was very minor details because I really didn't catch anything. Yeah, I mean it's pretty much exactly what you would expect. It was faithful to the manga. The music's great. Like. Just the typical, fantasy stuff, but a couple earworms here and there. Voice acting's fantastic. Prosvd is Senshi is just amazing.
Oh, I didn't realize that was him. Yeah, that's perfect.
That's him. And then Emily Rudd, Nami from the One Piece live action is Marcel.
What?
That's her first anime role. Yeah.
I'm so happy for her.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Her very first anime role. She nailed it. I mean, she got all of the mannerisms and everything. Yeah. The dub VA is fantastic, honestly. Like I know I'll probably get called out on it, but I typically watch dub more than sub in most cases because it just works better for my ADHD to just be able to listen and I can focus on other things. But yeah, fair. But it's really good. I mean, they did there wasn't any time where somebody was like saying something I was like, God, like kind of taken out of the moment, which can happen sometimes with dubs. But yeah, everybody's voice fit. They were all well acted. I will definitely be keeping up with it. A little surprised, just because I haven't really watched anime on Netflix before, that it is actually like weekly on there. I'm so used to them just doing like
dropping it.
Yeah, just the drops. So that's a little weird to kind of get used to for them. I'm used to it with Crunchyroll and some of these others. But yeah, overall fantastic. Definitely would recommend it. Especially if like knowing it's a slow burn, if you're the kind of person that does better with kind of getting the anime is a good launching point for sure. It can kind of get you through some of that little bit of that slower part that's a little bit, sometimes can be harder to read. I think it's a good jumping off point. And then like if you really like it, just jump right into the manga from there, because like you really haven't missed anything at that point. It's a 1-for-1. So but yeah, I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, I did too. I gave it I would say, like, if I was gonna give it like a number out of 10, I would say about an 8 to 10. Because I think it delivered what it to me, like it fit exactly the mold that it fits, and delivered that very well. So for me, that's very good. And I can see myself rereading it, and I see myself finishing to the end.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a solid 8. It's nothing at this point in time that would like knock me over. Like I would instantly like be like, this is hands down the best, but it's still really good that I really want to collect it. I want to have it in my collection. I want to buy it. If you're on the fence, like I was a little bit because of the first volume or so, get it from your local library, test the waters. You can interlibrary loan it, and it'll get you hooked, I'm sure.
And we love a local library.
We do.
We do. I pretty much agree. I think it's an 8 as well. It's one of those that I could definitely see like getting further through it. It would probably go up as it goes on because I feel like I have liked it more as time has gone on. It hasn't kind of been up and down or anything. It's been kind of consistent, just kind of going up. And the fact that like when I was done reading what was required for tonight, the fact that I didn't even make it like a full day before I started on the next part, which doesn't always happen with me.
Yeah.
That clearly says that they're doing something right. That it's, even though I'm like in a million other things right now, like this has my attention. So yeah.
So let me get some comments here. As an anime, it hooked me pretty good. After reading the Berserk manga, my first instinct is to read the manga instead of watching the anime.
Yeah, that was rough.
Yeah,
I've been going to the local library.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you never know. It's a half and half. Sometimes I would say, for some things I'd say anime first, some things I'd say manga first. It just really depends. Like, One Piece can be a hard sell because of the, how long all that is. But we're getting a remake of the first season, so
which is wild.
Yeah.
I've heard Witch Hat Atelier is great too. It is so good.
It's really good. That's another kind of slow world burn. You get like a good chunk, and then it's cozy, and then you get a good chunk.
It's one of the most beautiful manga I've ever read, and I'm not good at keeping up and buying manga as it comes out. But Witch Hat Atelier is the exception. Besides Junji Ito, I've got two sides. Inside me, there are two wolves, and one of them loves Witch Hat Atelier, and the other one loves Junji Ito.
And to quote Melanie, if you guys watch Melanie Nomar, to quote Melanie, she said, "That mangaka draws the prettiest feet I have ever seen."
Melanie, gross.
Weird Melanie comment. No, I love Melanie. It's great.
But no, I love Melanie, but I didn't need that feet comment.
They are gorgeous. They're pretty in that. Like, everything about that manga is pretty.
Anyways, Alex says Kate's loving Apothecary Diaries. I love Apothecary Diaries. I'm obsessed. As somebody whose major or part of my degree was in Chinese studies, it's like set in the palace. It's beautiful. She's great. I'm gonna read all of Apothecary Diaries. Alex, no, we're not. Listen, no. If this was an AMA, if this was a Patreon exclusive, then maybe. But only because Tina would make it happen. That's the only time. Okay? I'm not going to get us demonetized for this, only for other things. Like, you can't say La Dollar Bean with the actual word for it. Right. If I say, I get demonetized. And you can't say curse words in the first 5 minutes.
Really?
Yeah, Melanie is currently reading One Piece. I don't know how far she is.
She told me the other day, and I'm sorry, I forgot.
So based off of this, for people who like this, what are some recommendations you think you give? It could be for anything.
I mean, Lodos War, since we were talking about it, I feel like that's kind of the obvious one. And I would say Slayers as well, if you want kind of more of that classic fantasy vibe.
There's not enough Slayers.
Mm-mm.
I need to wear that $300 wig.
If you like the cooking aspect and just want over the top comedy, you could always go for Shokugeki no Soma. Like, that's always,
if
you know, you know.
And I know.
Yeah,
I do too.
If you definitely want some food wars, yeah.
I was worried if you're going to say you definitely want a different F word that I won't say because then we'll get a tangent.
No.
Beautiful feet. I did anyways. It's been a day. I've been at work all day having to be work self, and now I'm just like, this is me.
Please don't let us end the show on that topic.
I would say, like, Farron is a good stepping off point for this.
God, so good.
Ascendance of a Bookworm, if you like slow builds, Ascendance of a Bookworm is really great. You can do the J Club, you can do it as the light novel, or you can do what I'm collecting, which is actually the manga. I'm
so glad you're collecting it so I can read them.
Yeah, you can read it.
Guys, please read Ascendance of a Bookworm. Listen, is it an isekai? Yes, but listen. girl from our world. She's really into books. She didn't have a great life. She dies. She's reborn as a young child in this fantasy world.
She didn't have a horrible life. It was an okay life.
She was not a good person. Okay. She's reborn this young child. There's no books. She makes books happen. And let me tell you, I've watched like 40 episodes of that thing. It's so compelling. It is so oddly compelling. To watch somebody make paper for the first time and figure it out. Weirdly interesting.
Yeah.
There's a game series called Etrian Odyssey by Atlas. This got a similar vibe. I've seen that cover around, but I never played it.
I think I actually own it, and I don't think I've played it.
I think all three of us have bought some anime games that we've never played.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, in terms of like games and stuff, I think Baldur's Gate 3 is kind of the obvious, in terms of just generic fantasy game at this point that kind of hits all the points of just about everything.
Dragon's Crown.
I knew you were Dragon's Crown.
Because of the cooking part, like when you get like if there was a game of just the cooking part in Dragon's Crown, I'd be all for it. But that's all I want. I just want to cook meals for my party. I want to fight over ingredients, and I want to like be like, there you go.
I'm sure there's some like if Lisa was right, she could tell us some like sim games that are like that. Because we're getting a lot more cozy, which is a very wide range now. I feel like you can apply it to so many things, but like cozy life sim games that kind of feel like this.
Well, you had like the DS, like the map, like when you had street passes where you got to cook and eat food for your. Do you not remember that?
I remember there was like the little dungeon crawler that was in there with like the street passes where like I just remember there was like a prince in a cage and stuff, and like you would just gradually like go through the rooms and stuff and fight monsters.
There's another one like with the like little Miiverse or whatever that was like a cooking one that was like that you cooked for a venturing party.
Somebody says the creator loves Baldur's Gate. She even drawn fan art, so I'm gonna try to find that.
Oh, that's awesome. Kayla brought up Odin Sphere. Yeah, that's a perfect one because there is actually like the whole food thing where you like I think you like plant the fruit and things like that. It's been a long time since I've played it, but yeah, I mean, I'll basically just push out just about any George Kamatani game because I just love his art style so much. So
that's another game that I have 2 versions of that I haven't played.
I still haven't played Odin Sphere.
Grimoire is another really good one.
Yeah, that's
I haven't played that. I've wanted to play both of those.
They did a remake of that on the Switch not too long ago. You can get it pretty cheap.
The Odin Sphere people are the same people that made 13 Sentinels, right?
Yeah, that's all George Kamatani's art style.
Everybody played 13 Sentinels.
13 Sentinels, Odin Spear, Grimoire, Dragon's Crown. Those are all vanillaware. Yeah.
Tina, I'm going to bring over 13 Sentinels because now that I've beaten it, because I did nothing until it was done. I need you.
I'm game for it.
Well, you have to be. It's a game. You have to game.
Yeah. I'm game for the game.
Game for the game. Let's let me be your t-shirt.
Game for the game.
And then Unicorn Overlord, I think, is the name of like the next vanillaware one that's coming out this year. It's almost like a Final Fantasy Tactics type one with that kind of art style.
Oh yeah, the gaming podcast I listened to was talking about that, and they were really excited because they all liked 13 Sentinels a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm in. You convinced me. Once I played 13 Sentinels, now I've told everybody about that game. It's hard for me to explain to people because
you can't.
I just have to be like, dialogue trees, story trees, but time travel, but maybe, but not. I don't know.
It's just a very, very dressed up visual novel, really, at the end of the day. It really is, but not in a bad way. Like I think it's one of the most compelling ones that I've probably ever played. It's one of those that like, if I could ever reset a gaming experience and get to experience it again for the first time, that would probably be top of the list for me because it was just that good. It really was.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the closest thing for me is 999 with the Nonary games.
Yeah, real similar.
And I lived 13 Sentinels. You just gotta throw them and let them swim in the timeline soup. Oh, it was beautiful. Every day Elliot would be like, "So what'd you learn?" I'm like, "I don't know."
I learned a thing and I'll process it later.
And it's one of those that like when you get to the end, you spend so much time thinking about the ending and like how many things were happening that led up to that you didn't even notice like while you were going through it, but then as you think back on it, you're like, oh my god, that makes sense. Like it's crazy how much ties together there.
And there's
In
a
terms,
Pompadour guy in it. Anyways, continue.
there you go. In terms of cozy games, because Maddie, I know you've been playing it. Dave the Diver is
Ah,
fantastic.
so good. Oh
That's
yeah,
a-
Tina. Yeah, we did
No, it looks good. I've been watching Gab Smulders. Like
Oh,
I've
yeah.
watched her playthrough. So yeah, that one looks right up my alley. I would love it.
It's really good on a Steam Deck too, if you have one. Like that one plays so well on there for sure. But regardless, like that's just a solid game, and I think it's out on Switch, so you can always get it on that too if you want to get like the portable aspect there.
It's so fun. It's stressful sometimes.
Yeah, sharks can make it stressful.
The sharks make it stressful. Yeah, but I think let's see. Besides this, I guess if y'all in the chat have any questions for our lovely co-hosts while they're here, they both like anime and games and a whole bunch of other things. Now Tina she likes more of the anime things, but Ren also likes real people things. When I say real people things, I mean things that have real people in them, like live action.
Yeah, like a little bit of everything.
Tina's never watched them with a real person in her life. So
not ever.
No, I'm not even looking at the screen right now. I can't abide by seeing. Like,
she doesn't know what I look like.
I have no idea. When Maddie comes around, I make her wear this like Kig mask, and she hates it.
She actually has a filter on there right now that actually makes us look like VTubers.
Yeah,
specifically. So
I wish.
Oh, wow.
No, I want to be a VTuber. You know? Without the work though, without the streaming all the time, I just think it'd be really fun to have one. You know. Final Fantasy 16 is on my list on PS5.
16's fantastic. You just got to go into it with an open mind.
Yep. No expectations.
Yep.
And then also just go play Yakuza Like a Dragon. It's the best RPG that's come out in like years.
Do it.
Genuinely. So good.
The ads are all over YouTube, so.
Good.
As it should be.
I can't wait to play Animal Crossing as a Yakuza game.
I can't wait to play Pokemon in a Yakuza game.
They give us so many games in one.
I know, it's crazy.
That's been my entire personality.
That's still hands down my favorite photo I've ever taken or experienced with you, Maddie, is like you as just
Namba.
Yeah.
It's happening
again next weekend. It's my only cosplay next weekend.
That's what made me play all the games, though, was your Namba. Because I was like, okay, now I've got to understand this. So I literally played every Yakuza game last year. Every single one.
Yay! That's my only cosplay next week. Woo!
You did it. That was all you.
When you point out liking anime and gaming, I thought about that SoccerCon commercial from 2009. It's one of my favorite things. Listen, everybody, do yourself a favor.
Garuga Mesh.
Look up the SoccerCon commercial after we're done, and give it a watch. If you've been to anime conventions, it's gonna feel too real, and if you haven't, it's still gonna feel too cringy and real. It's so good.
I'm trying to remember when I went to SoccerCon. It might have been 2010. I think I went the year after that commercial.
That's so good.
It was wild to be alive then.
Tina, have you played Dragon Quest XI?
I've played one Dragon Quest, and it's been so long ago. I don't remember which one it is. It's on the.
They all meld together.
Yeah, they meld together. So I haven't played 11 though.
That's on our list of a series to play through. We made a whole Excel sheet of JRPGs to play that we haven't played yet, and then we just played Final Fantasy VII instead.
I can play Hack Sign.
As a longtime Dragon Quest fan, good luck with that first one. Like,
we did the first one just fine.
Really?
The very first Dragon Quest, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow, yeah, man, that is just such a grind fest, though. That like I struggled with.
All of them are. I'm already like, my favorite is 7, and that's like so hard. We're thinking very optimistically, but I'm very aware. Like maybe it's not gonna happen.
Well, just put in 20 hours, and then you're at that point in time, you're like, either I'll continue playing it or I'm done with it.
I think I finished 5, 8, and 11. They're all really good for different reasons. I know for a while there, a lot of the older ones were getting like really hard to find, like the 4, 5, and 6, because they did like DS remakes of those, and then like those became really hard to find, and they were like $100 a copy. I think they re-released most of those on like mobile devices and tablets, if I'm not mistaken. So you can access them pretty easily, I think now. But yeah, they're definitely worth going through for sure.
And speaking of cozy RPGs, just wait for this year, guys, when eventually they re-release the remastered versions of Suikoden 1 and 2. And that'll be a really great time for all of us eventually when it happens. But also Aiden Chronicles.
I was gonna say Aiden Chronicles is what, 3 months out? Is April, I think? I can't remember
Yeah,
the release
it's
right
April.
now.
I was just waiting for Maddie to pull out that whiteboard with the Suikoden, like, and this is why you should play Suikoden.
The problem is I don't have a good avenue of a place to post said video, but I would if I had my own channel or something. I would do that. It would just be like, here's my things that I'm really into, and that's all the channel is.
Maddie, just be a panelist at a convention and just do a PowerPoint spread on why everybody in the room should play Suikoden.
That's my.
It doesn't matter what your panel is actually about. You just hoodwink them. You just bait and switch them. You know? Surprise!
You never know. Well, people have been wanting Near Mint Crew to do panels for things, but I always forget about them. Playing things is hard now.
Yeah.
I got games to play. You know?
Yeah.
I got games to play, figures to buy, TV shows to watch. I got a lot going on. What if I want to go rewatch Godzilla because it was really good and everybody should watch it? You know, everybody should watch Godzilla Minus Zero. It's one of the best movies I've seen in a long time. It's so good. Oh my god. Anyways, it's 9:00. So we can wrap it up here. Everybody in the chat, thank you for hanging out with us. It's nice to see you all. It made my day a lot better because all of us were dealing with really gross weather all day. So everybody stay safe and inside. I'll be back next week with something. I don't know yet. It's one of those months. It's fine. I'll figure it out. But I know that I'll be back with Omar and Amanda later in the month, though. They will be on the channel. And thank you all to my chat. Thank you to Tina and Ren for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. And we'll see y'all when we see you. That's a normal way to sign off.